Welcome everybody to the notes for lesson 11A for Prob and Stats. The target today is I can create a sample space for a given event using a list or by creating a grid table. So what we're going to look at doing today is finding out a way to list all the different ways something can happen. So we'll get into some more specific examples, but I'm going to show you how to do that with a list or with a table. So the first one, just to get us thinking about it, would be to make a list of all the different orders that the following sports teams could be written in. So if we're looking at it that way, one thing we can do is we can say, okay, maybe the Vikings I'll put as V, the Twins can be T, the Timberwolves we'll just call the Wolves, and they'll be W. So one way we could list those teams in order would be Vikings, Twins, Wolves. Okay. Well, that's not the only way we could do it. So we could go, we could still leave the Vikings first, but then we could say, let's do the Wolves second and the Twins third. So then if you think about it, there's not another way to put the Vikings first. So we've done all of those possibilities. So let's pick a new team to go first. Maybe we'll say the Twins will go first. Okay, well, we could do Twins, Vikings, Wolves, or we could do Twins, Wolves, Vikings. So that would be the two ways that Twins could be listed first. So there should be two more ways to do this. The only team we haven't said first is Wolves. So we could do Wolves, Vikings, Twins, or we could do Wolves, Twins, Vikings. So that would be every single way that we could list those three teams in a specific order. So that's what we're going to try to look at today. So this one was only 3 different teams, and we only had to do 6 different options. But you can imagine if we had 30 teams, how that might impact the length of our list a little bit. Okay, so before we get too much further, let's get down some definitions. I know that you have some space on your note packet to write these down. So I'm just going to give you a second. Feel free to pause so you can write any more of these down if I proceed too fast. But a couple things that we should know as far as terms would be what an event is. So an event is just some action that we can do or study. So an event, it could be a coin flip. It could be a soccer game. It could be anything like that, etc. Okay, events are just something that happens. So we can look and we can see the result or the outcome, which is our next word. So event is some action that we can do or study. Outcomes would be the possibilities that could happen. So if we're talking coin flip, the outcomes would be either heads or tails. So if it was a soccer game, maybe it would be you win or you lose, or you draw, it's a tie. So there's different scenarios for these different events, and the scenarios we call outcomes. So it's whatever can happen from the event that we're looking at. And then we'll practice this next one here in a second, but the last one that I want you to look at is sample space. So a sample space is a list of all the possible outcomes that may occur. So a lot of times we would write it in brackets. So if you can see this one here, so for a coin flip, we use the brackets heads and tails. All right, so brackets and then H for heads, T for tails. That's all the different possibilities that can happen when you flip a coin. There's nothing else that can happen. So when we're using the brackets, we're saying, hey, these are all the possibilities that can happen in this event. Anything that's not listed in these brackets is impossible. It can't happen. So at this point, make sure you have good definitions for those 3. If you don't, then take a break, pause the video, get it filled in, and then click play when you're ready to move on. But I'm going to move on now. So if we're talking about rolling a die, well, we're talking about what can possibly happen on that. So as you can see, I have a picture of a dice down there at the bottom right. But when you're talking about rolling a die, well, the numbers on the dice are 1 through, I think that cut off. 1 through 6 are the possibilities. So when you roll a dice, you're either going to get a 1, a 2, a 3, 4, 5, or 6. Those are the only possibilities that can happen when you're talking about rolling dice. So I'm going to put those brackets around like we had talked about. and that's how we write what the sample space of an event is. So the event was rolling the die. The outcomes are all the numbers 1 through 6. Now we'll take it one more step and we'll roll 2 dice. Okay, so basically with what we just did, if I can go back to that, we just listed them out, 1 through 6. But sometimes that's not the best way to do it. Sometimes it gets a little bit more complicated and we need a different way to organize. So let's say, suppose we roll 2 dice this time. It says build a 6x6 grid to show the different outcomes for the sum of the 2 dice. So what we want to do, let's answer these questions here. It says, what is the event? So we're going to roll the dice, and then this is an important word. Pay attention in your homework and make sure you know what you're doing to the 2 numbers. You might be adding them, you might be multiplying them. So what we're doing is we're rolling 2 dice, and then we're taking the sum. So whatever 2 numbers we roll on the dice, we're adding them together. That's what we're doing. That's what our event is. So let's go back and follow these instructions. It says build a 6x6 grid to show the different outcomes. So here's how you might use a grid. I'm going to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 on the top outside, and the same thing on the left. Whoops. So those are our possibilities, right? Now all I have to do is I need to take, so in this upper left-hand box, it's intersecting a 1 and a 1. So all I need to do is add them together and put 2. So the box right next to that, if we're moving left to right, would be 1 on the left, 2 on the top, so that would be 3. And as you can see, we're doing 1 plus 3 here, 1 plus 4, 1 plus 5, 1 plus 6, and we're looking at filling that in. One other thing that I'll point out to you is it'll be the same numbers going down, because here we're looking at adding 1 on the top with all the numbers on the left. So feel free to skip ahead here to filling in the whole grid. I'm going to keep doing that here. You should see a bit of a pattern when you start to fill it in, and you can feel free to fly ahead of me right here. In fact, I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to come back, and when it resumes, it'll be filled in for you. So try to pause it now and make sure you get this all filled in correctly. All right, so make sure that your grid is the same as mine. You should notice that diagonally the numbers just tend to repeat in this grid. That won't always happen. It depends on what you're doing with the dice. So when the second question, when they say what is the sample space, maybe the first thing we want to do is draw those brackets, because that's the form that we want our answer to be in. So if you look at what can happen, we're just listing all the things that can happen. If you notice across the middle, there's a whole bunch of 7s. There's 6 different ways to get a 7 here, right? I don't have to list the number 7 all those times. I just have to put it once because it is a possibility. So I look at the number 1, it's not a possibility. The smallest number that I can possibly get doing this is 1 plus 1 or 2. The biggest number is 12. And if you look, every number between 2 and 12 is a possibility in this chart. So that's our answer. 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 12. Okay, so all the numbers between 2 and 12 are possibilities. They're outcomes that could happen with the event of rolling 2 dice and adding. Then this last one looks like it cut off a little bit. There we go. It says, based on your grid, which outcome occurs most often? So like I had talked about, if you look straight down the middle here, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different ways to roll a 7. So that's going to be the most. That's the most common outcome. If you look at 6 and 8, they also have a lot, but they don't have as many as 7. So 7 is the most often rolled total when you're rolling 2 dice and adding them together. Let's move on. So you order breakfast at a restaurant. The restaurant has 2 choices of drink, so I'm just going to note those right away: milk and orange juice. The restaurant also has 3 choices of meat: sausage, ham, and bacon. you're going to order 1 meat and 1 drink. So what we're looking to do is, okay, what's everything that could possibly happen here? So let's make some abbreviations. So let's say I'm going to call milk just M, OJ for orange juice. We'll go S for sausage, H ham, B bacon. Just so we don't have to write out the whole words all those times. So again, I'm going to start with my curly brackets. Anytime it says sample space, we're going to start with those. And let's look. So all the ways to order 1 meat and 1 drink. So let's say we do the meat first. So let's say we order sausage. If we order sausage, we can either get milk or orange juice. So one of my options has to be S with M, sausage and milk, or sausage and orange juice. Okay, we're going to repeat this for every different meat. So ham, I could either get ham and milk, or I could get ham and OJ. I could either get bacon and milk, or I could get bacon and OJ. And that's every single possibility. 1 meat and 1 drink, that's every single possibility. So the question is, how many different outcomes are possible? That's an important word. We didn't have any repeats this time, but if you would have gone back to this last one, the amount of outcomes are different than the amount of different outcomes. So that's an important word. It's just saying don't worry about repeats. So 1, 2, 3, we have 6 different ways to do that. Okay, and then we kind of already answered this one, but this is our last one for today. Using the list of sports teams from the beginning, answer the following questions. So give the sample space of the different orders of teams we made, and then how many different outcomes. So again, we kind of answered this already, but just to remember, we had Vikings, we had Twins, and we had Wolves. So we can just go through and repeat what we had before. We had VTW, and then reversing the second 2 letters. All right, then we picked a new team to be first, and then if we did VW for the first one, we did WV for the second one, and then we did Wolves, Vikings, Twins, and then Wolves, Twins, Vikings, curly bracket. Okay, again, the amount of outcomes is 6. That's not always going to be our answer, but it just kind of happened a couple times in a row there. So making a list is one way to figure out how many different ways something can shake out, how many different outcomes there are. It's not the only way, and it's certainly not the fastest way sometimes when we get into some other things. But today, that's what we're going to practice, so you can get into the homework packet for today's work, and we can go from there. Thanks for watching.